It's been a long, painful wait, but 5 million Melburnians are just 6 hours away from taking the first steps out of lockdown. As we go to air, the city is racing to reopen, with bars and restaurants working to swing back into action at midnight to celebrate the end of 262 days under pandemic restrictions.
Welcome to the New Flesh podcast, the podcast you deserve. My name is Ricky Allpike, and joining me as always is my good friend Jonathan Astro. How are you?
Excellent. Not as good as you, Ricky. How are you?
Well, I believe you're referencing Freedom Friday, which is coming up tomorrow for those of us living in Melbourne, Victoria. I don't know. I am a little bit steamed about it because it's freedom, but it's not freedom. So
Okay.
I've got a bit to say on this topic, and that's where we're going to start with Melbourne's emergence out of the longest lockdown, the COVID lockdown that the world has seen. So a couple of days ago, Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews announced that lockdowns were ending on Thursday night, so that was yesterday at 11:59 p.m. As the state reached the milestone of 70% vaccination. But hold on to your horses, don't get too excited. So here's just a little rundown of the things you can now do, okay, which you couldn't do before. So cafes, restaurants and pubs are open, but only for a maximum of 20 indoors and 50 outdoors, and that's only if you're fully vaccinated. And this is regardless of the size of your establishment. So if you run a cafe, I don't know, the size of a shoebox, you can have stuff 20 people in there. And if you, if you run a restaurant the size of Walmart, still only 20 people. And also there's been, just an aside to that, is there's been a bit of vaccination information contradiction. That's a couple of different government organisations put out the information that your workers, your staff at cafes and restaurants only needed to have one vaccination in order to open up this Friday. But then the government came out and said, no. They need to be double vaxxed. So that's created a bit of panic amongst cafes, restaurants and pubs because they're sort of scrambling to work out.
Well, if you've timed it wrong, like if you've timed your first shot wrong and you've got to wait 4 to 6 weeks, then what are you going to do?
That's right, yeah. Retail is limited to outdoor only.
Ah, yes, good.
So we can open the grand flea markets that we have here in Melbourne, but we can't open anything else. And that's a joke, by the way. We don't have any flea markets here in Melbourne. So that's totally ridiculous. There's no such thing as outdoor retail, really. I don't know what that means. So you can have 10 people over to your house.
They're just saying words.
They are. They're just saying words. You can have 10 people over to your house as long as they're fully vaccinated. Mask mandates are still in place indoors and outdoors. That shits me to tears. You know, seeing people like people alone in their cars driving down the road wearing a mask. I do not understand it, or walking their dog with no one in sight and they're wearing a mask.
In like deep in the suburbs.
Deep in the suburbs, yeah. I don't know. I think they just love to show people that they care, I think that's what it is. The curfew and the 15-kilometre radius have been lifted. So we've had a 9 o'clock curfew that's lasted for fucking ages, and we can't go further than 15 kilometres from our home. So those things are lifted. However, movement between regional Victoria and Metro Melbourne is not allowed. So this is a strange one because people from New South Wales, so the border is open from people coming from New South Wales to Victoria, and, potentially you, John, could come for a visit here in Victoria, and you could go regionally. You could go, to Lorne or somewhere nice on the Surf Coast and have a bit of a holiday. But we Melburnians cannot, which is really fucking strange. So
That is strange.
That's just ridiculous. People in Melbourne must still work from home if they can. There's a staggered return to school with various year groups attending 2 days a week and increasing until everyone's back on the 5th of November. And I believe children from years 3 and up are required to wear a mask at school. I think I read that somewhere, which I think is child abuse, really. Weddings can have 50 people outdoors and 20 indoors. And again, everyone must be fully vaccinated. And gyms are still closed, and I believe pools are still closed too. So we're out of lockdown, but we still have all of these restrictions that make life just unbearable, I think. And Dan Andrews, he seems to have been influenced by your man, Dominic Perrottet in New South Wales. So Perrottet's been aggressively opening up and saying all the right things, like, talking about personal responsibility, living with the virus. He's stopping the daily press conferences.
Stopped the medical officers coming to weigh in needlessly when they're, as he said, we're the elected officials.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. So that's great. That's annoyed me so much, just seeing these unelected health officials get up day after day at press conferences and scaring the shit out of you and telling you what you can and can't do, and
with little context. Yeah, that's the big one.
Yes, with no context. That's right, and we'll get on to that issue in a minute, because there's another development that's happened here in Victoria. So the weird thing is, like, nothing's changed in Victoria. Like, COVID cases have been higher than ever. Deaths are a daily occurrence. So you got to ask yourself, why is Andrews opening up now, And obviously it's because he saw what's happening in New South Wales and he reacted, This guy, he's a leader who doesn't make any decisions without running polls and focus groups first. He's reactive, not proactive. I think he's the worst political leader in Australia at the moment. Like, he loves wagging the finger and telling people what they can and can't do. On many occasions, especially last year, he blamed Victorian residents for outbreaks and called them selfish. He's had the police force, the police here in Victoria enforce rules with harsh physical force and with no mercy. And he's pursued a COVID zero policy since the beginning of the pandemic, and believing he's the savior of the people and believing he can keep the virus at bay with short, sharp, snap lockdowns, which, as we know, end up dragging on for months rather than days. And
what are you talking about? Is it the curve's flat, isn't it? It's flat. We flattened the curve.
Flattened the curve, yeah. Well,
took a couple of years, but we did it.
We did it, yeah. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. That's right. But we've been through 6 lockdowns.
Yes.
6 fucking lockdowns. It's way too much. And throughout the pandemic, New South Wales has had a much more measured approach. They've had much fewer days in lockdown than Victoria. They've taken more overseas arrivals. But interestingly, they've had less cases and less deaths. Melbourne is the most lockdown city, and we're responsible for 60% of the COVID deaths in Australia, And you got to ask yourself, why is that? New South Wales has been freer and more open and taking more people. They test more as well. So, you'd think that if you were testing more, you'd find more cases. But no, we still have more cases in Victoria, And I refuse to believe that, it's because New South Wales residents are for some reason more COVID compliant or somehow better at following the rules or more compassionate than Victorians. And I think it's all down to bad leadership and bad execution by the state government. Hotel quarantine was a mess. Track and trace was a mess. The vaccine rollout in Victoria has also been a mess. It was almost impossible for me to book in a vaccine. I'd just be on hold all the time, or I'd talk to someone and they'd just say, listen, we can't book you in because we don't have any doses. Like, we don't know when we're getting them. And this is the other thing, like the issue of vaccination mandates is a pretty hot topic, especially in the US, but also here a little bit, even though I think Australia is a bit more compliant when it comes to getting vaccinated. But, Daniel Andrews has come out recently and said that, the non-vaccinated will be held back from opening up until well into 2022. And when he talks about it, he sort of says it with such, it's almost glee, like he loves the fact that he's, stopping these stupid anti-vaxxers, from getting the freedoms that us vaccinated people have, And I know we've said this before, like, I think it's overall, it's the feminization of the culture here in the West. It's an aversion to risk. We're unable to talk about or confront death. If this was the 1800s, you would have already lost a number of children before their 3rd birthday, and probably a wife or two, Death used to be everywhere, and now it's nowhere, and we're unable to balance risks and rewards. And I think there's a fundamental lack of understanding around what it actually means to live a good, meaningful life. There's more to life than the avoidance of death, as our hero, Lord Sumption, often says. I think there's a tacit assumption by the ruling class and the social elites that we can do without social interaction because we have technology and social media, But what about shared experiences, both big and small, like, concerts and religious gatherings, or, sharing meals, talking with actual eye contact, what about physical touch? What about feeling the wind on your face, instead of having it blocked by a mask, or, what, heaven forbid, watching a sunset, I think politicians, particularly here in Australia, seem to be treating these things as excesses rather than key components of being human. I think it's just a tragic situation, and I think we're going to, in the, post pandemic and post lockdowns, I think we're going to hear a lot of stories of tragic situations, domestic violence, suicide, all of that sort of stuff is going to come to the fore. And there's just so many issues. Even elective surgeries have been cancelled once again here in Victoria, to create more room for, the COVID wave that's coming when we open up, in our hospitals. And there's already a backlog of, I think, 15,000 people, waiting to get their elective surgery. So that's people that, that need a new hip, that need a new knee, that, will probably live, but are in a lot of pain, and they just need to hang on tight, do it for the greater good, What do you think about Melbourne's opening up?
Well, I think Melbourne's a disgrace. I think, Daniel Andrews is a terrible leader. He's totally gutted the place. I don't understand what they're going to do when the focus turns to economic recovery and, trying to bring, as you say, bring the life back to a place like Melbourne.
Yeah.
He's probably not the guy to do it if you've spent all this time scolding everyone. And at one point he defended the curfew by saying, oh, yeah, geez, so you won't be able to go and get milk at 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night. And it's like, excuse me, since when is it the interest of the government what I do late at night or when I do it?
Yeah,
that's none of your goddamn business. So that's the sort of stuff that he reveled in, and turning the cops into just sort of his hatchet men, demonizing everyone. I think that it's bittersweet, I guess, because as you say, it's freedom, but it doesn't sound like you're able to do everything. And if it wasn't for the New South Wales Premier, I don't know where Melbourne would be. It's taken a guy to come out and just to do some things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And to accept responsibility that comes with them.
That's right. Peter Credlin has named him the Premier of Australia, the de facto Premier of Australia. And I think he is. He's actually taking a lead and a stance and saying, you know what, we need to balance these risks. We're not just going to let it rip. We've had things in place for a long time. Vaccination is, at a really healthy point. Let's just open this thing up. And he's even taking on the Prime Minister of Australia by, opening up the international borders and taking overseas arrivals into Sydney as well. And just on this issue, of Dan Andrews and curfews and radius limits and stuff like that, never once has he shown any medical or scientific evidence that those sorts of measures make a significant impact on slowing or curbing a virus. If you're still socially distancing and you still got the masks and all that stuff, and the vaccinations rolling on, and you can't go to restaurants, and, you basically locked down. What difference does it make if you go for a walk at 11 p.m.? What difference does that make? It's not going to impact COVID. And what if you want to drive 25 Ks out to, I don't know, like a big bushland and go for a walk or something? How is that?
A bit extravagant, isn't it?
It's just,
Well, now you're going to tell me you want to go see your parents, or go on a date or something, or I don't know, go and just explore or something. Fuck. How dare you? How dare you do those things? But I sent you that follow-up article which was interesting from the ABC, which is the perspective of someone who's perhaps a little nervous about opening up.
Yeah, well, you sent me that article this morning, and that got me kind of rolled up on this whole issue too. Just seeing what absolute cucks the majority of Australians are. What absolute COVID bedwetters they are. Here's a guy in this article who's, what is he, a teacher? He's double vaccinated. He's not 75. and he's worried about getting the virus. He's concerned that they're no longer going to be publishing all the exposure sites, the thousands of exposure sites.
I can't believe, do you know, even at the height of I never read those.
No, me neither.
I've even been to some of the places and I never even read. I was just like, I wouldn't know where to read it.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I've met people that check them every day.
What?
Yes.
Why?
I don't know. They're just rabid about it.
Get on with your life.
Exactly. And this is the good thing that's come out in the last couple of days. So there is some health organisation. I can't recall offhand who they are, but they're forcing the government to release the documentation of the health advice that has resulted in things like curfews and the radius limit and basically all the lockdown restrictions, basically trying to pin down what the actual evidence is and what the health advice has been that these things work and why we've done them, And I don't know if this is an Australian specific thing or this is happening worldwide. Like, the government does not give you the health advice. They say, we're doing this, we're acting on health advice, but you never know specifically what that advice is and how that's justified with statistics or science or, previous models or whatever. You never see that stuff. And I don't know why.
You've got to get them in cross-examined, Senate estimates or something. You got to get them like on the record so that they have to, to speak up, put their evidence forward. We also need better journalism, like the ABC.
Yes.
Like that article I sent you is essentially, that is just, they were essentially in bed with that guy who was worried.
Well, they were essentially saying you need to be worried and, don't get too excited. This isn't Freedom Day. It's just, it's unbelievable. And maybe it's got something to do with the fact that, and I've heard this in the UK, that in the UK the government spent record amounts of money on advertising to push their message of restrictions and lockdowns and all that sort of stuff. And that obviously filtered through into newspapers and TV stations and, magazines and that sort of stuff. So they're getting a lot of revenue from this advertising.
Right.
So why would they go in hard and, question some of these things when, something like the BBC gets a lot of money or independent news outlets get or TV stations or radio stations get all this advertising money. Maybe it's the same here. Maybe the ABC gets a bit of money for running these ads, or maybe 7 News, 9 News, The Age, the Herald Sun, who knows? They're getting advertisements all the time for COVID related stuff. So, there's money coming in from that.
Well, they're addicted to the drama as well.
That's it. Yeah.
They're obsessed with the drama. And that's why they hated the press conferences coming to an end. The journos were just like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
Because they love it. They love everyone watching them because they're on prime time. We get to hear them asking questions like they're in the White House,
Yes. Yeah.
So they love all that.
And it's easy for them too. They know what they're doing every day. They rock up to the press conference.
That's right. They don't have to go and do investigative reporting into corruption or branch stacking or any of that stuff. They don't have to actually go and look into gangland murders and whatever. Like, they just have to go, anyway, there's this many cases today and 3 people died. And
or they say stuff like, will Halloween be cancelled this year?
We need to get on with it. We need to open up, and there needs to be more pressure. And look, maybe the approach needs to be just bringing back people who are risk takers, which is everyone. Like, if you do anything, you're a risk taker. But it's like you just need to take the power back from the bedwetters. So we need to create opt-out situations, not for forget the vaccine, just get vaccinated and let's all move on. But then beyond that, we should say, okay, everyone's coming back to work, but if you're a bedwetter, well, you can stay home and it's probably not going to be as good. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to get all the resources you want because you're staying home. Or why have we let the people who are frightened of absolutely everything, totally take control of all situations?
Yes,
they're like, oh, well, no, I don't want any of it to happen. I want you to stay home. And you say, no, we need to get back to the world where, you don't get to tell people what to do.
Yeah, well, that's something Lord Sumption, he argued for, sort of an opt-out situation where if you are an older person or in an at-risk category for health reasons, that you opt out of social life, you isolate, and we'll take care of you. We'll ensure that you get some sort of payment if you can't work, or set you up with online, like organize, food deliveries or whatever, or just make life possible for those people who want to lock down, and for everyone else is healthy. Like just take the risk and go out there and live your life. We really have, I think, sacrificed the health and well-being and education of the youth to stave off death for the older and sicker people. And I know there's be loads of people out there that will think that's a really callous viewpoint, but this happens all the time. This happens in hospitals. Like, you've got one respirator left and you've got a sick 5-year-old and a sick 95-year-old. They give it to the 5-year-old. They weigh it up. They go, that guy's had 95 years. This kid's got 90 years to go. They actually make those sorts of decisions all the time.
Oh, routinely. Yeah, absolutely.
Like I said before, we're unable to have these sorts of conversations, about what is a long life, and is it fair to hold back young people for the health benefit of older Australians,
of the baby boomers who are the most lauded generation in the history of mankind.
Yep.
They've got everything. They've got all the property. They've got all the opportunity. They're still working. You know what I mean? Like, thanks to medical miracles. And now, that younger generation has been doubly fucked over.
That's right. Yeah.
Of whatever opportunity they had.
Well, watch this space. We'll see what happens in Victoria. And I just pray to the powers that be that we don't go into a 7th lockdown.
Oh my God.
I mean, I don't know that could ever happen. Like, that surely after New South Wales opening up, like you just couldn't go back to a lockdown. But again, you just have to look at Andrews and his history. I wouldn't put it past him that he would lock down.
He never saw a lockdown he didn't like.
Yeah, that's right. Well, moving on, we did want to talk about a story we read in Spiked Online about MPs being banned from YouTube. And this has a little connection with COVID. Because as we've seen over the past 18 months, we've witnessed an extraordinary assault on civil liberties, as we've been ranting on about for the past 20 minutes or so. But governments around the world, and including here in Australia, have awarded themselves extraordinary powers, stripped citizens of their freedoms, undermined parliamentary scrutiny, and, banned protests and increased surveillance. So, the COVID crisis has pushed governments towards treating free speech as a second-class right, and tech companies have been more than happy to get in on the action, and to censor away. So YouTube's policy quashes freedom of inquiry and inhibits people's ability to have open conversations about matters of public policy now. We've seen YouTube's prevented users from uploading content that contravenes the gospel truths of the World Health Organization. And earlier this week, we've seen YouTube remove a speech given by veteran British MP David Davis. The speech was on vaccine passports, and in the course of his speech, he opposed vaccine mandates and vaccine passports, whilst praising the vaccine itself. And soon after the video's release, YouTube took it down, stating it had contravened its community standards, accusing Davis of spreading medical misinformation. And this is really chilling. If democratically elected politicians like Davis can't debate policy in public without being subject to big tech censorship, then no one's safe. And overall, MPs don't seem to give a shit about tech censorship. Not really, as long as it enables them to clamp down on misinformation, they're cool with it, And I think this approach reveals how little politicians and tech companies think of what ought to be a fundamental right. This guy Davis, he's not opposed to vaccines. He's just looking at it from a political perspective. Should we have vaccine passports? Should the vaccine be mandated? These are not scientific questions. These are not medical questions because, obviously if you wanted to stop the spread of corona full stop, you would weld everyone shut in their houses
CCP.
For a couple of years, like the CCP do. You could do that, but, do you want to do that?
I'm not certain that I like it. It sounds effective. Sounds a bit extreme.
Yeah. So this is the intersection between science, public health, and politics. You've always got to weigh stuff up. There's always pros and cons and risks and benefits and to everything in life. We could stop all the road deaths in the world if we just banned people from driving cars, but we've decided that we're going to live with a certain amount of death so that we can live a particular life where we can travel distances for work, for recreation, for holidays. I think YouTube has really, over this COVID period, has really shown that shit is getting out of hand. We talked about Brett Weinstein in a couple of podcasts ago, and about his exploring of all, sort of alternative medicines for the treatment of COVID, and he got completely slammed. And he's a guy that's a scientist, and he'd be fully open to inquiry and if something doesn't work or if a scientific theory doesn't work, he'd be the first to throw it aside. And we've seen on that Brett Weinstein case, and I won't mention the drug that he's advocating for because, we could get banned, but I do know that India and Japan have had huge success using this particular drug, as has everyone's favorite podcaster, Joe Rogan, who got the COVID, a few weeks ago. So, yeah, I don't know. Where do we go from here? It's not just extremist material being censored here. It's just, it's people talking about policy and politics,
But those misinformation tags or like those little warnings and labels that appear on, YouTube and Instagram and everything, like just on every fucking post.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, when that appeared, who's clicking on that? Like, as in, isn't it just wallpaper now? Like, you just see those things and you go, oh, well. Like, I've stopped seeing it. It happens so often.
Yes, yeah. Well, you could post something on Instagram. You could just post the word COVID as a picture, like just that word, and underneath would be a link that they slap onto the bottom of it that will take you to some COVID information vaccine place. It
doesn't make sense though, because like, what is it? They're sort of struggling with their role, aren't they? Like, are they? Aren't you just a big bad Silicon Valley corporation that's like got shareholders and you swallow up other companies and you want to make money? Like, isn't that what you do? So why are you acting like you care about I don't know, like COVID and stuff? Like, or is that your role to do that, to keep me out of trouble and to stop me being lied to? Like, I don't know if I like these platforms, diving into the finer point of what's real and what's not, like, too much. I think that's up to us to decide. I know some people say, oh, it's getting powerful and everything. Just go, well, I know, but it can't be their role. Like, we need to figure out another way to become literate about this stuff.
Yeah.
Because, Ultimately we need there to be more platforms. Maybe we need what they've been talking about, which is to get to make it blockchain, so that, you take the power. If you follow the process down, like, because the arguments are, oh, just make your own platform. And you go, okay, well, I will. I'll make Parler. So you make Parler, and then the same powers that be all collude and say, they like PayPal kicks you off, Amazon's server farm kicks you off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Apple kicks you off. So ultimately, if you follow it down the rabbit hole, it all leads to the same place where these companies, if they don't want you, if they don't like you, if they don't like something you're saying, you're gone.
Explain how blockchain would help there.
Well, apparently, look, I'm no expert on it, but it's a way of, because I think the Dark Horse podcast is on a platform that uses blockchain now, I think. And the idea is that it's sort of somehow it wrests power from these companies and makes it more a bit like they talk about in that show Silicon Valley, a bit more open source sort of free internet style, so I've just heard it being mentioned as a way out of getting, breaking free of, because you can't have a total market capture of so the only way you can do it is to have your data stored on Amazon's server farm, have your app sold on either Android or Apple, and then to get your money through your PayPal or some other bank or whatever, and you go, okay, well, we need to change up the whole system, so that because at the moment, I guess people can put pressure on any one of those pinch points. People can pressure PayPal and say, okay, you're funding Alex Jones or whatever, stop doing that. And then they go, okay. And then, and eventually if you find someone else to pay for your thing, then then group of people will get together and say, to Amazon, oh, you need to get these people off your servers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's too many big businesses that are all colluding to get this outcome that we've got right now. That's why we get these absurd situations where, unless you are the biggest person in the world, unless you've got, even then they get into trouble. But unless you're the biggest person in the world, you're just erased. You just got no leg to stand on. And their guidelines are so vague and general.
Yeah,
they mean whatever they want them to mean. They mean whatever they say. They're just like, oh yeah, today it means this. Even when there's open contradictions about COVID or whatever. You could have all that Fauci stuff where he did his noble lying and whatever. I'm sure that they haven't gone back to all the old videos and said, and gotten rid of those or whatever.
Yeah. Well, maybe one of the solutions, or maybe a start, would be to break it up so one company couldn't be involved in the whole chain, so YouTube couldn't own the servers that the content is on, or and then they couldn't own, say, the platform where you download the apps from, or something like that.
Well, you can't just and you can't tell people they're controlling what it means to be part of public life now.
Yeah.
So, I'd like to go back to a world where we didn't have social media, and that it wasn't part of our life, and that you didn't have to interact with the way that we do now. But unfortunately, that's where we're at. And if you say, oh, well, you don't have to do that. You don't have to be part of our platform. Like YouTube goes, oh, well, you don't have to be on our platform. You go, well, where am I going to go, bro?
Yeah, that's right.
What am I going to do? You are erasing me you are the only game in town. So it's disingenuous to say just go somewhere else.
Yeah, Daily Motion.
Yeah, so terrible. So good.
No, it is no good. Even Vimeo is not great.
Well, Vimeo, we've used Vimeo for our...
But there's just something about it. I do like the interface and stuff, but I don't know, just people just aren't into
friction. You don't feel... It's not as addictive.
Yes, yeah.
And and YouTube is lightweight and addictive. So,
All right. Well, we've had some pretty heavy topics. I think we better move on.
I need the real news.
Yep, bring it on. Sheila, you're back for the news.
I am.
I believe you've got some sports news on the cards today.
I do. It happened by accident. I never go to the Daily Mail sports section because it looks silly to me. But
that looks silly. That's silly. Everything else is fine. Perfectly fine.
None of it's fine. I think the writers at DM know that. Okay, so here's the headline. Anti-racism groups urge Newcastle fans to ditch culturally insensitive Saudi Arabia fancy dress in tribute to the new owners after dozens don homemade kefirs. Now, when we say homemade kefirs, I've seen the footage and it appears to be tea towels with rope around their heads.
But this is these images are quite striking. They're all burly white English guys.
Yes.
And but the thing about that, look, there's a bit going on. So firstly, I love the word fancy dress. Don't you? Fancy dress. Like imagine someone saying you're being really culturally insensitive. Take this fancy dress seriously. Like come on, do it properly.
I like that we're doing this story like in Halloween month as well.
Yes. Well, no, but do you remember on the Australian Late Show many years ago, the D Generation, they did a tea towel bit. So was it Yasser Arafat?
Yasser Arafat,
Yeah, they did Yasser Arafat a lot.
And then a guy would just come in from the side and use his headdress to dry
dishes.
Dry dishes. That was how come those guys haven't been cancelled?
I don't know. But the thing is about this, and you guys have seen the pictures, it's a really hard one because the fans at this football club, I really don't feel they're doing this out of trying to be offensive in any way. I think they're doing it to honour the new owners, and it's really tough because there's a lot of organisations who want them to educate the fans, but I think the fans are just trying to show their appreciation to the new owners. I mean, I
also think that maybe we should send the equality and inclusion team over to Saudi Arabia, and they could maybe have a look into the treatment of women in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah,
like you know what I mean. Why is that controversial to say that Saudi Arabia has absolutely appalling human rights?
Well, one of the comments section, if anyone wants some references, is on fire, as you can imagine. Yeah. But one person did say, okay, then they're not allowed to wear suits.
Yeah, there you go.
That never wins, though. That argument never wins. Oh, you're not allowed to wear suits.
So, I mean, I don't know. It's a tough one, but I mean, the fans do look very they look
smart.
No, they look like they're having a celebration, and they're very appreciative.
They do look like they're having a lot of fun.
Yeah, but not at someone else's expense. It looks like they're, I don't know. To me, I think they're trying to say thank you for rescuing our club. I don't know enough about football, but I've from what I can gather, the club is now sort of awash with cash, and it's going to sort of help the club out. So anyway, on to the next thing. We have next off the production line, Colombia sterilizes drug lord Pablo Escobar's cocaine hippos.
Cocaine hippos?
Yes. Escobar had a private zoo, and he had 2 males and a female hippo. And all of the other, when he was killed, all the other animals from the zoo were confiscated, but authorities couldn't be bothered to get rid of hippos because it was too hard, and they just left them. So apparently they thrived in the pond, the man-made pond, and then they bred profusely.
Wow.
And they broke out of there and they got into the waterways, and now they're in plague proportions. They're the biggest group of them outside of Africa. And there's been such environmental destruction that they now have had to sterilise some of them.
That's terrible. Presumably,
that's amazing, though.
Are not germane to Colombia.
and apparently they've got very acidic wee that's poisoning the drinking water.
Oh, shit! Right.
And but locals are protecting them because they're making money out of doing tours and selling hippo paraphernalia to tourists.
Are they leaning into them being coke hippos?
Yeah, they've lent into them completely. So they're protecting them. They were supposed to be culled, and the locals protected them, even though they're aggressively territorial and wrecking the place.
What would be good is if they set up a sanctuary for animals. That'd be a big tourist attraction for people to go to Escobar's zoo. And, you know, I know that they probably wouldn't like Escobar's name on it, but it would bring in a lot of tourist dollars and save all these animals too, you know?
I know. I think the other animals were killed. I'm not sure. But the hippos have gone all right. Okay, next up, cocaine crisis in the elderly. NHS is treating patients as old as 90 with mental health issues due to extreme use of Class A's, while number of over 60s in hospital soars 500% in a decade.
But doesn't that just mean, if I'm reading it correctly, is it just old coke pigs getting old? Or is it like...
Experts say better care has resulted in a cohort of drug users living to old age.
Yes, that's what it is. Yeah, so it's like
80s coke hounds.
Yeah. So they're just retired, and now we're like, oh, you know, these old people are on drugs. It's like, yeah, but they always were. They're just old.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's terrible. And coke, what a dumb drug! Like, so expensive. Like they don't have to do it all day. You know, like it's not. You know, and
we wouldn't have a lot of the extravagant, ridiculous 80s music without coke or movies. You know,
that's true. That is true. I think it was in large quantities back then, and probably, you know, but yeah. Anyway, that's terrible. This is in the UK, is it?
Yep. Okay, next. Anger grows over The Activist, the worst idea ever for a reality television show.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Yes, I know.
Tell me, I want to know more. Tell me more.
Well, it's a new competition pitting social change warriors against each other, judged by an R&B singer and 2 actors.
Of course. Is one of the actors like DiCaprio or...
No way. He's not woke.
No? Is he not woke?
No.
I can
Not
hang on.
really.
I can give you a summary of it. Similar in style to The Apprentice, 6 activists from around the world will compete in a series of challenges and events to create the most social media buzz. And an overall winner will attend the G20 summit in Rome to meet with world leaders.
All right. No, I want you to know that there's a happy end to this story. It was a failure, and it was going to be a series, but then it was like something. It didn't work, and so they turned it into a documentary. So that's good. Anytime
this could be an amazing satire.
I know, but it's not. It's real. Those people are all like, "This is great. We love it."
Wow.
You know. So yeah, no, it is terrible. But then again, actually. The end stage of any good movement is a reality show. So, like, you know, any movement, and that's the end, like when it's over. You know what I mean? So once it's like imagine that if it was like Me Too the show, and one of the weeks it's like who has to knit the best pussy hat. You know, like the movement's over. It's dead. It's over. Like, or if there was like, yeah, like you're in a basketball court or something, and you've got there's like a guy in a Harvey Weinstein mask, and you've got to run away from him. It's like Chasey, like, you know, like Weinstein Chasey. You know, so it's over. Once we're doing that, it's over. Like the movement's dead. Whatever it was is over. So the activists, bring it on. Make it 5 seasons, 10 seasons, 20 seasons, like Survivor, and that's when it's getting really exciting. It's like capitalism always wins, you know.
Moving on. Indian woman has her first child at aged 70. One of the world's oldest new mothers after she and husband, 75, conceive a son through IVF.
Okay.
Wow. Is that what IVF is for?
Yes.
Yes.
To make your dreams come true.
Yeah. Absolutely. At any age.
At 70.
Wow.
I mean, heaven forbid that child should have a parent past 10.
Past 5?
Past 5.
Fucking hell.
Yes.
They must be cashed up though, so they'd probably be plugged into fairly good healthcare. That's the only way you get healthcare in India is if you're cashed up, you know.
Really?
Well, I would think that IVF itself would be quite expensive.
Well, yeah. No, look, it's not good. I think. Is there anyone who hears these stories, like that story, and says, "Oh, that's so beautiful"? Like, is there anyone in the world who hears that and says it's beautiful? Or does everyone sort of go, "Look, I don't really think it's fair on the kid," and it's maybe you've had your day at the beach and the rest of it.
Have they had kids prior?
No, this is their first.
Right.
Why don't they adopt? That's the other thing. Like, I'm sure there's heaps of kids out there around the world that could benefit from, a loving family. Like, you could have adopted them fucking 30 years ago.
I know.
Okay, moving on.
This is the headline. Is that you, Ye? Kanye in bizarre prosthetic Caucasian mask with eye makeup for New York City meeting with disgraced ex-Trump lawyer Michael Cohen after changing his name to Ye.
I knew this story was going to come across your desk. I saw a picture of the mask. It's ridiculous. He looks like a mannequin.
Yes. The mask, because I was like, what is that? And I was like, oh my God, it's Kanye.
Yeah. No,
Hashtag whiteface.
It's Ye.
It's Ye. Just get it right, okay?
Oh, God.
Why does he have an Asian influenced name?
No, it's Ye, is it? Or is it Ye?
I don't know. Is it?
Isn't the whole
isn't
point Kanye, Ye?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
It's not Ye. No, as in President Ye.
Okay.
Actually, he should have changed his name to President Ye with a Y. My name's President Ye. That would be brilliant.
Is he still running for president in 2024?
Okay, might as well.
Yeah.
So they've divorced now, have they? Him and his missus?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, well isn't it across, your
Is it,
portfolio?
it is. But I thought you might be asking Ricky.
Ricky doesn't know.
I don't know. What do I know?
Oh, I don't ask him about Kanye West. No, so
I think they're in the process of divorce.
Oh, okay.
But he did make her wear a wedding dress to his Donda
listening
which I felt was a bit strange when they're in the amidst a divorce, but that's all right. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, who would have thought that that Kim would be the one you'd be like, oh geez, get away, Kim, she's reprehensible, but in this instance you're sort of like, don't go down with him,
well, sales of his clothing line would argue that point. He's not going anywhere, certainly not down.
He's popular.
Well, his clothes are.
Get back to music, Kanye.
All right. So next up we have, what was she doing with her legs? Kremlin-run TV claims US TV interviewer positioned herself as a sex object to distract Putin when she quizzed the president about Europe gas crisis.
I feel like I've heard this story before.
Yeah, this happened in reverse to Trump, didn't it?
Yeah, with I think was it with a Russian interviewer?
Yeah, she was a salsa dancer, right?
So is this Crumpet Wars?
This is just putting hot biatches in front of powerful men and trying to distract them.
Wonderful. It is like a carry-on film, isn't it?
Yeah,
fantastic.
I love the Crumpet Wars. This should be a segment. We should return to the Crumpet Wars from time to time.
Well, Boris, it wouldn't work with Boris because he'd probably end up racing them off, and just having a kid with them quickly, and
Well, hasn't he married some really young bird?
Yeah, he's quite prolific. You'll find
Right.
Carrie. I don't know Carrie's last name.
I don't know
Johnson.
Well, it is now. I suppose. I don't know, but yes. She does look a lot younger when, at those lineups, the G20 summits and stuff with all the wives and husbands, first blokes and the first blokes.
First blokes.
Yeah, maskless, of course.
I think there's only one first bloke, isn't there, at the moment? Jacinda Ardern's husband.
Oh,
what about Merkel? Does Merkel have a husband?
Does she have a husband?
Or does she have a wife?
I don't. Oh, well, she might. I don't know.
I don't know.
Looks like she might.
No, so we'd know. We'd know if she was lesbian.
Well, Carrie Lamb would have a first bloke, surely.
Yeah, No, it's not good.
All right, next up. Surgeons successfully transplant a pig kidney into a human, marking a significant step in the decades-long quest to use human organs for life-saving transplants.
Wait a minute. I'm getting the order mixed up in my head. So we're using pigs in organs in humans, yeah?
Well, we're not putting human kidneys in pigs.
I got it mixed up for a second. I was like, that sounds extravagant.
What? What do you mean? Oh, yeah, no. Pig kidney into a human.
Yeah.
I know the Chinese like their pork, but, like stealing kidneys from Uyghurs and putting them in pigs, like that's next level.
Oh, you're going to pay for that. You're going to get banned, shadow banned.
No, well, that's good. That's good. Like, we're saving people. But, I mean,
There's a horror movie in this, someone gets a pig kidney and then turns into some weird pig man.
Pig killer. Man.
Just Harvey Weinstein.
Or just a boss who fills you up in the copy room, perhaps.
Yeah.
So plenty of pig men walking around. I just feel really sorry. Once again, pigs who are smarter than dogs are getting shivved again,
That's true.
Poor pigs. It's always pigs getting the fucking short end,
They need to find a higher purpose for pigs, At the moment, their only purpose is food.
Yeah, well, look, I don't want to get too much into it because it's probably not, but I have read that the way they behave, the things that we pumped up about them, they don't actually do when they're in their natural habitat. Like all the gross stuff they do is when you put them like cheek by jowl in captivity and treat them like that. But like they're actually really smart. They do all sorts of things like in the wild that are really, really cool, like leading people away from their food and stuff, like tricking, doing decoys and shit.
Yes.
Like we're really clever.
They are really clever, and I just am a bit upset that now they're going to be used like, something from The Island, the movie, The Island.
Michael Bay's The Island.
Yeah, Michael Bay's The Island. Yeah, it's terrible. All right, lastly, I've got a headline. It's called Insulting. Aussie singer banned in China after releasing controversial song. Now, this song is supposed to be apparently a love song, but it's called Fragile. And China has banned it and said it's an insult to Chinese people.
Is it though?
They, apparently,
aren't they being fragile?
Apparently it's a love song, but there's a few things in it that tip you off it might be something else. There's a panda cooking a dog in a pot. And one of the lyrics is desiring for dogs, cats, bats, and chivets or civets. There's also a line saying it's illegal to breach the firewall. You'll be missed if the poo discovers it.
Oh, Winnie the Pooh. I get it. Yes.
This sounds like a documentary to me.
The singers referenced forced labour and detention camps.
This song's got some complex stuff in it. It also sounds a bit like Rough and Ready. Was it rocketing up the charts or?
It is going gangbusters.
Really?
It's going. Yes, it's because it's the number one song in Taiwan.
Oh yes,
of course it is. Yeah,
it's a big fuck you.
Yeah. Another line. Oh, I hear a sound. Fragile self-esteem has broken into pieces. It's okay. I still have IG and Facebook.
That's great. That's good.
We've talked about this on previous podcasts that, where are all the movies that are exploring China as the villains, and maybe music is filling that void, or maybe it should.
I'll just give them a shout out. Their names are, Australian singer Kimberly Chen and Malaysian rapper Namawi. And their song is called Fragile, for anyone who would like to look that up. And apparently, I looked at the comments under this, people love it. And they said it's quite catchy and that the video is wonderful.
Great. I'm going to get all over it. Honestly, I guess music is the only outlet, one of the only outlets you've got, because the moment that you have to deal with large corporate structures, which China has all but captured,
Yes.
Hollywood and NBA, TV, whatever. Yeah. So you can't get it out there. Whereas this is just, you could write something in your bedroom and then produce it and then just go, here we go, check it out.
Yeah. It's a love song. All right, guys, that's what I got.
Great. Excellent, Sheila. You pulled me out of the doldrums.
Oh, good. All right.
All right.
See you guys.
Bye. If you enjoy what we do here on the New Flesh podcast, there are a number of ways you can contribute to the success of the show. Consider supporting us financially by becoming a Patreon member and donating monthly or yearly. Alternatively, you can donate money through the Buy Me a Coffee platform. If you're strapped for cash at the moment, there are other ways to support the New Flesh. You can give us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. These really do help others find our show and help spread the word. Or you can just simply tell your friends about us. Back to the show.
All right, good stuff. That was another news flash. Now, John, you've got something cool to talk about.
Oh, I got a delicious story for you. Okay, now this has been everywhere, but I think that you've got some angles that people maybe haven't covered. So, in short, there's a author called Carmen Mola who wrote a trilogy of popular detective novels featuring a strong female protagonist, a female police inspector who, and this is a quote, who loves grappa, karaoke, classic cars, and sex in SUVs. So Carmen Mola wrote these 3 books, very, very successful, I'm to believe. Now, it turns out we have discovered that Carmen Mola is a pseudonym for 3 Spanish television scriptwriters, Jorge Diaz, Agustin Martinez, and Antonio Mercero. And these 3 guys are in their 40s and 50s. Recently, they won a prize, a €1 million prize in prize money at the Planeta Prize just last week, I think, for a new unpublished thriller, separate from their detective character that I mentioned a second ago. This is a different novel, unpublished manuscript, but still, they submitted it to Planeta Prize. They won €1 million. They unmasked themselves for the first time at this gala in front of Spanish royalty, no less. Most news outlets have printed this story the same, but there's a little bit of intersectional mayo from some of the usual suspects, as you
So
imagine.
they walked out on stage. Everyone anticipated a woman to come up.
Correct. Yes, I've left that out because Carmen Mola obviously is a female-sounding name.
Yeah, and this award, this was an award for female writers. Is that correct?
That's not quite true. Because maybe that's why this story hasn't had the cut through I thought it would. So it is the second richest prize in the world. So it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. Anyone can enter, but the criticism has come from them. There's a feminist who has said, for instance, that what has she said here? Beatriz Gimeno, a feminist writer, former head of one of Spain's national equality bodies. Equality, oh, I like that, not equity. The Women's Institute attacked the men for creating a female persona in their publicity for Carmen Mola books over several years. Quote, quite apart from using a female pseudonym, these guys have spent years doing interviews. It's not just the name, it's the fake profile that they've used to take in readers and journalists. They're scammers. Close quote. So obviously, some people on the to the right side have said, finally what we always knew, men are the best or whatever. And then people on the left, I guess, of saying, oh, that's not quite fair, that they've lied to do blah, blah, blah. But it's such a strange story, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I've got an interesting quote here. It says, last year, a regional branch of the Women's Institute recommended one of Mola's works as part of a selection of books by female authors, including Margaret Atwood, that could help us understand the reality and experiences of women in different periods of history and contribute to raising awareness about rights and freedoms.
Great. I see no reason why that statement can't still hold true. Like,
Yes.
do you know what I mean?
But a lot of people will say, you know, they've been duped. Like, you know, how is it that, you know, three men would know anything about the female experience, you know?
Well, I'd say, you know, the awkward thing about these unmaskings and stuff like that statement, the awkward thing about that is it's because if you come out and say, oh, wait a minute, it doesn't say anything good about women, or it doesn't say anything useful about the female experience or whatever, then you're sort of saying more about yourself than you are about the work, aren't you? Because you're saying that, you know, you're an ideologue, that you don't stand by what you said. You should have the courage to stand your ground and say, you know what, these men, for whatever reason, they got it right this time. Do you know what I mean? So, look, it's a strange story because there's no heat behind this story in what I've read, in that maybe because it's Spain. Do you know what I mean? Like, if this was America, holy shit. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think? Like,
Yep.
something about the European angle has caused this to be less sticky.
Yeah. Well, I think Europeans, Spanish, French, you know, won't count the UK in this, but they're far less woke, and they're far more into the recognition of the differences between men and women and stuff like that, you know. So,
well, the guys also seem wonderfully oblivious too. Like, they've denied that, because the issue here is that three men have written a bunch of successful novels and won this big prize using a female name to help themselves along. But they deny this. They said they used a pseudonym, but they didn't necessarily focus on it being a woman. It could have been a man, you know what I mean? But that's something I deny. But they've also said, like, you know, just the sort of blithe comments, the way they're just sort of like, they're smiling and they're just like, oh yes, we thought, you know, it's time to come out and blah blah. Like, they're not letting it get them down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they're just pushing.
Well,
on.
they're on top of the world. Like, not only do they have like a successful book franchise, I guess, but they've also taken out this top prize and they've walked away with €1 million, you know, which is about 1.5 million Australian or US? No, it must be Australian.
So, look, it's a fascinating story. I want to know. Look, I feel that the usual blowhards out there on the left aren't doing their jobs here. Like, Penguin Random House are the publisher for these three guys, the trilogy that they did of the detective, right? Where's the walkouts? Where's the strikes?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, why have they just, like, what I don't understand, if you're a hot under the collar wokester, why do you get hot about some stuff and not about other stuff? Like, why do you go, I hate Jordan Peterson and that's terrible, but what these three guys did is perfectly fine. I don't get that.
Yeah.
Like, isn't it your job to be a wokester 24/7? Like, shouldn't you be coming in saying, okay, today it's Tuesday, 9 a.m. we walk out for these guys. 2 p.m. We've got to walk out for. We also, I think, you know, I just realized we also sell Mein Kampf, so we're going to walk out for that. You know what I mean? Like,
again, I think it's because the US doesn't really give a shit about any other country. You know.
Yes.
I mean, they don't care what happens in Spain. They don't care what happens at, you know, Spanish literature. Like, you know, why would they care about that?
I must say, Europe. My experiences in Europe, it was a shock to see how loose Europe was, and a lot less. Like Barcelona, they don't care about all this woke stuff.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, they don't. They're just not leaning into it. So it really is an American export.
That's right, yeah. But what's interesting about this case is it sort of crosses along the cultural appropriation mindset, you know, because, you know, you're borrowing experiences from, you know, other people to exploit in your novels, you know. You know, we've seen examples recently of you know, people being just hounded about cultural appropriation in really ludicrous situations. Like, you know, I've got a few examples here at the American Music Awards in 2013. Katy Perry got into a lot of hot water for dressing like a geisha. At the University of Ottawa in Canada, a yoga teacher was shamed into suspending her class because yoga originally comes from India.
Yeah.
She offered to retitle the course Mindful Stretching. Then you've
Don't
got,
do that.
I know, students at Oberlin College in Ohio. They protested culturally appropriate food like sushi in their dining hall, so they didn't want to have sushi. And I think we talked about this a long time ago, you and I personally, about a museum in the US that gave out kimonos for people to wear while they walked through a Japanese-themed exhibition. And there were massive protests the next day from wokesters out the front. And then a day after that, there were massive protests by Japanese people who were in support of people wearing the kimono because they love the kimono and they love to see as many people in it as possible, you know. So,
but this story highlights the absurdity of the notion of lived experience.
Yes, yeah.
As a dogma in fiction writing.
Yeah.
Lived experience is sometimes necessary, you know, for writing, but not always. And that's awkward. Do you know what I mean? Unfortunately, this is make-believe, you know. So, look, firstly, because I mean, the Guardian then, you know, dove in, like tried to make some connection in one of the other articles that you sent me about, you know, Indigenous Australia and all of that. Now, that is, I think, an extreme position to jump straight to that. It's a very specialised case as well. I think that if you're going to sing a song that isn't yours, you better sing it with feeling and do your research. You know what I mean? Like, we don't want stereotypes or half-baked stuff. And if you really want to, if you're doing something where you're really diving into someone's culture, you know, you really should know what you're talking about.
But do you think there's a severe lack of understanding over about the process of writing?
Absolutely.
Writers don't just sit down and go, "Oh, I'm gonna write about, you know, a 12-year-old Nigerian girl." You know, that there's actually a lot of research that goes into even writing fiction. You know, because you've got to place your fiction in a particular time and place. So you have to research that.
Absolutely. No, this stuff is always usually complained about by highly uncreative people, and it's a miracle that anything gets written at all. And most people who are writing something are doing it from a good, I think, are doing it with good intention and in good faith, and are trying their best. And look, it's all about risk as well. And if you're going to, you know, make some bold moves, like, you know, I'm not sure what, for instance, Thomas Keneally's background is, but, you know, would we let him do Schindler's List today fully? I don't know. I mean, actually, I'm embarrassed. I should probably look it up. I don't know if Thomas Keneally has connections there or not. But like, so please correct me if that's the case. But it's one of those things like, oh, actually, wait a minute. He did Chant of Jimmy Blacksmith too. So you definitely wouldn't be doing that. I don't care what his excuse is today. Do you know what I mean? Like, you'd be like, no, you don't get to do that. So anyway, it's the myth is that you need to be the thing to write the thing. Yeah. Isn't it? You know? So, you know, could a white guy from the suburbs write Zadie Smith? I don't know, probably not. Maybe, but it's not exact. It's not an exact science, you know. We're dealing with the imagination, make believe, you know. And the rule is, if you can trick us into believing, what does it matter? You know, like if it has the ring of truth, or if it feels, you must have had the experience where you've read or seen something, you know, from someone who doesn't come from your background at all, and they've managed to nail you, like Wake in Fright, you know, directed by Ted Kotcheff, where I felt like, you know, the person who directed that movie must be the most Australian person ever, but it's Canadian.
Yeah, well, in that case, I think it takes someone who is an outsider to really see what the culture's like in Australia. And for those who haven't seen Wake in Fright, everyone should see it. It's the greatest Australian film ever made. But it's a big critique on drinking culture in Australia, and I think it's still relevant today. You know, I think
absolutely.
I mean, you don't want to get off the beaten path here and start talking about Australia's drinking culture, but, you know, not a lot's changed since 1971. You know.
Totally.
The other thing that gets bandied around a lot is this idea that you have to take special care when writing someone else's culture or writing someone else's experience. You know, you need to represent those characters and be sensitive and mindful, and
I don't know what any of that means, though.
or to get permission. That's the other thing.
Yes,
like you need to seek permission. Like this idea that you would want to write a story about, let's say you have a trans character and you're not trans, and you have to go out to the trans community and somehow, get signatures or
no.
organization.
You're behind the times. There are there's a whole industrial complex around this. This the woke industrial complex. So you have to get consultants and sensitivity readers. So sensitivity readers would be in publishing. They're people from said communities that you send the work to, and then basically, they don't tell you how to fix plot holes or logic or anything like that. They really just are there to deconstruct, to destroy. And it may be best case scenario. Add some. Give you some things to think about, and maybe they can give you some cultural insights, but they're not, they're not your editor. They're not going to help you make it better. They're just going to say, oh, it's possible someone somewhere will be offended by this. And you say, well, I think that's probably true about, everything.
Yeah.
So consultants that's a huge thing now. Consultants, yes, trans consultants and whatever, reading the work and going, oh yeah. I don't think so.
Yeah, well, we do know that in a lot of writers' rooms for TV shows and stuff that, there has to be a diverse cast of voices there in order to cover all the bases. If you're going to write an Indigenous Australian character, that you must have an Indigenous person in the writers' room, regardless of their talent or their experience,
Yeah, well, it's and I think you sent me that article, the Lionel Shriver article about her experiences at the Brisbane Writers Festival 5 years ago now, I think, a long time ago, where she gave her talk about cultural appropriation, lived experience and all of that. And then, there was that Yasmin Abdul-Majid who got up and walked out in a huff. Whatever happened to her? She's gone.
She moved to the UK, I think.
Yes. So
she claims she was hounded out of Australia.
Mm.
Yeah. Hey, you've left out the most salacious part of that Lionel Shriver story, and that she gave that speech wearing a sombrero.
Yes, she did. She didn't give a fuck. So anyway, her point was, don't you dare tell me what to write. Do you know what I mean? Because ultimately, this is because writing is it's the artist's business and no one else's. And don't ask for permission, and don't self-censor. Don't let the scolds tell you what's what. Write, create, do it with good intentions, and that's that. Because if you follow through the logic of what's appropriate and what's not to write about, it all falls apart. Because ultimately, it is all make believe, and there's countless times in history where people have written outside their portfolio, and it's been fine, and we love it, and it's something we never stop talking about. So. You know what I mean? It's sort of, it's just, we can try and be a bit more sensitive, but by and large, I just feel like, again, you just need to come up with new publishing houses and stuff, I think, to get good work.
Well, I think that there's always so many contradictions in these sorts of issues. And one big one is that, everyone, especially everyone in the West, is crying out for more diverse representation in books, films, TV, you name it, But yet, on the other hand, you're not allowed to write anything outside of your own direct social, economic, racial, or gender situation. So what's the future? Do you need to write everything by committee? And that, I think, could potentially have disastrous effects. I know these three guys have got together and written really successful novels.
They're clearly friends, though.
Well, they are, and they
all work in the same genre.
They all work in the same. They have a background, and they're obviously talented at what they do, and they're all professional writers. Before they came together, but I think there's a reason why most novels are written by one person. Why most amazing novels, classic novels, are written by one person. Because I don't think the committee way works. And I know TV is a different deal. You often have writers' rooms with lots of people, but I think the writers' rooms that work really well are the ones that have really strong showrunners who, they have a team of writers helping them construct the shows. And that's obviously, a time constraint thing as well. You just need to pump it out. But but you have a showrunner who is essentially like the director of the script, who has a really strong direction and a really strong authority over that writer's room. So I think that's why that works in that particular case. But, I can't imagine that great novels can be written by teams of diverse people coming together.
It takes a singular vision to create Infinite Jest. Do you know what I mean? Like you can't. There's an editor. You just need a good editor and the author. We don't need it to be. Yeah, I don't even know why anyone's even talking about this. It should just be like, it's so ridiculous. It's such a misunderstanding of the way the way art works, why we watch it, what we want, how we want it. Do you know what I mean? All in the pursuit of something which is noble, which is the idea of undoing past wrongs by trying to give people a little more of a platform and give people and not be so insensitive here and there. But why can't we do that in a way that's like not so fucking stupid and clunky?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Why are we taking
this way is impossible though. This way won't work because it will result, the end game will be there is no fiction and you can only write memoirs,
That's the thing. It's like this is just like so limiting. Like I don't understand why we've let publishing and whatnot just be captured by such bores.
Yeah.
Like, what I mean? Like fucking bores. Like, I got this funny, you'll like this. This is a good indicator. Like this is from City Journal. And this person who wrote this article, they're just sort of talking about children's literature, coming to a library near you. This is called The Very Intersectional Caterpillar by Dave Seminara. So this is just to give you an insight of what is going on out in the publishing world. Recently, this is from a dad. Recently, I perused 3 emails from bookstores offering children's book recommendations from a national Indie Next program organized by the American Booksellers Association. Amid 93 new books, all published since May, I couldn't find one that would appeal to my boys. The choices included a feel-good contemporary romance about a young trans athlete fighting against the discriminatory law targeting trans athletes. So direct. A book about a young lesbian with pansexual and non-binary friends who denounced her white privilege. I couldn't even get that out. Sorry. A queer coming-of-age story about a young lesbian who joins the boys' football team. A young adult novel about gender fluidity by a non-binary writer who is the mother of a transgender child. A tale of self-discovery about a bisexual love triangle. A book about a transgender witch named Wyatt. And a fabulously joyful novel about drag, prom, and embracing your inner queen that featured a fat, openly gay boy stuck in a small West Texas town. So what do you think of all that?
How are these publishing houses making their money back on this,
I don't know. Well, these are obviously being sent to schools, so that's how there's a real racket in getting your books in schools and on book lists and stuff.
Of course, yeah, that's where the money's to be made.
So that's where but that is, I think, that is probably the reason why you could see these Spanish guys changing their names.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, actually, they needn't have bothered because they've got Spanish-sounding names. So, there are some people who try and make a desperate plea that people of Hispanic or Spanish descent or whatever are just, all a bunch of white people in essentially.
Yeah.
But they got exotic-sounding names from certain perspectives, so they could have stuck with that.
Well, I think the female name helped them.
You think so?
No end. I think so. Yeah, I think it helped them to sell books. I suspect that crime novelists are mostly male.
But those big ones recently, Gillian Flynn and all of that, like those sort of ones with girl in the title,
I don't know. There's just something like the bio. I mean, just read the bio. It's a mother of what? 3.
Mother of 3.
Teaches algebra and writes
ultra-violent, macabre novels in scraps of free time in the afternoon.
That's it. I mean,
which is a story. That's a story in itself.
It is, yeah.
And we like the idea of a dark horse. We like the idea of a woman living a double life or something. And I guess maybe that added an edge to it. People will like, and there is a tradition of really great female crime writers, I guess. But yeah, I don't know.
But there's also a history of female writers taking male pseudonyms.
That yes, that's true. I think Charlotte Bronte did that initially. Memory serves. So it's look, I feel like you do get the sense that in the modern context, these guys did try and sidestep the obvious question, which would have been, don't you guys know that you're males and that how dare you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they just went, fuck it. Like let's just
Yeah. Well, I think
Tootsie. Say we're a chick.
Well, I don't mind because, they're on their hustle. I know what it's like. You know what it's like to be in your hustle and try and get shit off the ground, and you do everything you can within reason to sell yourself and to make things a success. And why not? If the end result is a good book, then it worked.
Yeah, maybe it's a tricky one though. No, but but there have been cases where. Like there was that guy who got unmasked. Oh no, it was because his story was made up. That's different. Like there was a guy who was unmasked on Oprah. He'd written a book that was not true or something, and that's a different thing. Whereas people's outrage about this, I guess, would be that they're taking something away from women, but they haven't though. The prize is available to everyone. It's about good work. That's what we want. Like people are complicating all of this. Just write good work. Let's reward the best work. Let's not make it a charity. It doesn't cost any money to write a book. It doesn't. So just, write it. It's hard. It's always going to be hard. It's not easy for anyone. So we shouldn't be thinking about, about who's written it. Not really. I mean, we do all get involved in that, but it shouldn't matter whether it was a dude or not. If the work is good, it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as a bit of a side issue, we've seen, recent discussions about actors and whether they should have the right to play a gay character if they're not gay, or a disabled character if they're not disabled. And there is a big push for representation in film and TV to be that literal, where you have a disabled character and that person is a disabled character in life, which sort of goes against the whole idea of what an actor does, which is play a character that they're not. Yeah,
I know, but if you want to be Hannibal Lecter, you better be Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, if you want to be Jason Voorhees, you better have killed
Absolutely.
35 hot chicks.
Absolutely, that's all. That's the only way thing for it. Like if you're not the exact thing on the screen, then I don't want to know about it. So the rules, don't break them.
Yeah, but that's such a ludicrous argument, isn't it? I mean, this whole thing is such a ludicrous argument.
Well, it is silly, but as I'm always fascinated as to how it's not shut down. Like I don't understand. People write about it, we read it. Like people at companies enact, policies about it. Like it seems like I'm just always so confused as to how any of these things, with that Scarlett Johansson thing a while ago. Well, I guess it's a little different. That is again. For Ghost in the Shell, then again, it was a big Hollywood movie. There are no Japanese actors that are as big as Scarlett Johansson. I think they love her in Japan anyway.
But casting a big movie like that is always a marketing exercise. You need a big bankable actor,
a big Hollywood star.
That the name alone will bring them in.
That's right. To justify the paycheck of the cost of the whole goddamn movie.
Yes, that's right.
You need Scarlett Johansson. Do you know what I mean? There's not that many people who can command that type of budget. But that movie got slammed for being whitewashed and whatever. So I just feel like, it's a slightly different thing. But generally speaking, a lot of this is very tiresome, and I don't understand why people don't push back. They just cave. They just go, oh, yes, I'm not going to play that role. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. Or, yes, you're too right. You were right. And it's like, no, stand your ground. Say I'm doing it. Say don't watch it. Say don't watch it. Simple.
So does that mean I can write some gangster rap now?
You could. But you're going to have to go and pop a cap in someone's butt. and then you can speak from a place of truth, your truth.
Excellent. I'll go out and buy a gun when retail opens up here in Melbourne.
Outside retail then only.
Yes, so I'll have to buy it from some guy in the street, of course.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ricky, another good show. Next week, we have our Spooktacular continues on Wednesday for Side Boob Cinema. We got Friday night, so do your homework. And Thursday, well, anything happens on a Thursday, right?
Or a Friday, technically.
Or a Friday. Sorry about that. I got it wrong.
Yes, not to pull back the curtain too far, but we record these shows on Thursdays.
Oh.
They air on Fridays.
Don't tell them that.
Okay, I can always cut that out.
All right. Okay, well, we said what we said.
Until next time, long live the new flesh.
On with the new flesh.
A female hippo